They laughed before I did. My fiancé leaned back in his chair, said something in Arabic, and his cousins burst out smiling. His mother looked down at her plate. His father cleared his throat. I kept my fork steady. I kept chewing. No one translated. No one corrected him. It wasn't loud, but it was meant to land. I felt it. When I finished swallowing, I looked at him and replied, quietly, in Arabic. Not sharp. Not angry. Just clear. The table went silent. Every face turned toward me. My fiancé stopped smiling. That was the moment I understood everything. Dinner was supposed to be simple. That was how it was framed when we arrived. Just family, nothing formal. I had met them before, but this was the first time everyone was there at once. Parents, siblings, cousins. A long table, too many plates, the smell of food settling into fabric and hair. I noticed the seating before anything else. I was placed at the far end, beside his youngest cousin. He sat near the center, closer to his parents. It looked accidental. It wasn't. His mother led the meal the way some people lead meetings. She decided when food was passed, when conversation shifted, when things ended. She smiled often, but her eyes stayed alert. Watching. Measuring. When my fiancé spoke earlier, it was always in English. Careful. Considerate. But once the plates were full and everyone relaxed, he switched. Arabic slid in naturally, like he had been waiting for the right moment. Jokes. Asides. Comments that didn't need to be repeated, because everyone at the table understood them. Everyone except me. At first, I assumed it was habit. A comfort thing. Then the laughter came. Not loud. Controlled. His cousin across from him laughed too quickly. Another looked at me, then away. Someone nudged someone else under the table. Still, no one translated. His mother didn't smile. She didn't stop him either. That was the first betrayal. Not the words themselves. The permission. I kept eating. I did not ask what was said. Asking would have shifted the attention onto me. That was the expectation. That I would interrupt. That I would make it awkward. That I would need reassurance. I did none of that. My fiancé glanced at me once, just briefly, checking. When I didn't react, he went further. His tone changed. Still light, but sharper at the edges. Another comment. More laughter. This time, his sister smiled without looking up. I understood enough to know the shape of it. Not the exact words. The intention. The way people speak when they assume you are not listening. His father adjusted his napkin. Cleared his throat again. He knew. He chose silence. That was the second betrayal. When I finally spoke, it wasn't to correct him. It wasn't to defend myself. I responded to what he had said, in the same language, using the same calm tone he had used. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't translate myself into English. I answered him directly, as if it had always been expected. The effect was immediate. Chairs stilled. Forks paused. His cousin's smile disappeared. His mother looked up sharply for the first time all night. My fiancé turned toward me, slow. Confused. Then embarrassed. Not because of what he had said. Because of what I had revealed. He asked, in English, when I learned Arabic. I told him the truth. That I had studied it years ago. That I never hid it. That he never asked. No one laughed after that. The rest of the meal continued, but something had shifted. I stayed quiet again. Not out of shock. Out of clarity. I had seen how easily they chose convenience over fairness. How quickly silence became agreement. And I understood that this dinner was not a mistake. It was a test. After dinner, no one mentioned what happened. That silence was louder than any argument. On the drive home, he talked about traffic, about his cousin's new job, about nothing that mattered. I listened. I did not interrupt. I was done filling gaps for other people. Over the next weeks, the pattern sharpened. His mother called with suggestions framed as concern. Where we would live. How often we would visit. Which holidays mattered. Each call ended with the same line, "We just want what's best." It sounded generous. It wasn't. It was control wrapped in warmth. When decisions came up, he deferred. Not openly. Subtly. He would say, "Let me check," and return with answers already shaped. If I pushed back, he went quiet. Not angry. Disappointed. As if I had broken an unspoken rule. At work, I kept notes the way I always had. Dates. Phrases. Who called first? What was promised? What changed? I didn't tell him. I wasn't collecting ammunition. I was mapping reality. The jokes returned, carefully. Always in Arabic. Always when others were present. Never cruel enough to challenge. Enough to remind me where I stood. Once, his sister repeated one in English, softened, and watched my face. I smiled. She looked relieved. That relief told me everything. I realized then this wasn't about language. It was about hierarchy. I was expected to be adaptable. Grateful. Flexible. The kind of woman who absorbs discomfort so rooms stay calm. There was a moment, small but decisive. His mother sent an email about the wedding guest list, copied to everyone. She had removed 3 names I had added. At the bottom, she wrote, "We assumed this was fine." I replied once. I wrote that assumptions work best when shared. I restored the names. I did not explain. Minutes later, my phone rang. He didn't ask why I changed it. He asked why I had replied at all. That question settled it. Not because of the list. Because of what it revealed. He wasn't worried about fairness. He was worried about friction. From that day, I stopped translating myself. I answered clearly. I declined politely. I did not chase approval. The room cooled. Invitations came later. Decisions were made without me, then announced. They thought I would fold. They thought I would soften. They were wrong. I watched, recorded, and waited, letting their choices finish the story for me. The boundary was crossed on a Sunday afternoon, quietly, the way these things usually are. His mother invited us over to talk. No agenda. No warning. When we arrived, his father was already there, seated, hands folded. It wasn't a conversation. It was a decision being delivered. They spoke in turns, measured, rehearsed. About unity. About respect. About how marriage meant blending into a family, not standing apart. Then his mother said it. That certain jokes were misunderstandings. That language had context. That if I felt excluded, it was because I hadn't tried hard enough. She asked me, directly, to apologize. Not for anything specific. For discomfort. I looked at my fiancé. He did not look back. He stared at the edge of the table like it might tell him what to do. That silence answered for him. I said I wouldn't apologize for understanding what was said about me. His sister laughed, once, then stopped when no one joined her. His father cleared his throat. Again. They reframed it immediately. sensitive, cultural differences, overreacting. The words were careful. The effect was not. They were asking me to shrink so things could continue as they were. I declined. Calmly. I said I was willing to be respectful, not erased. That was when his mother's tone hardened. She said, if I couldn't adapt, maybe the marriage needed reconsideration. My fiancé finally spoke. Not to defend me. To ask if we could pause the discussion. That was the moment I stopped hoping. Not dramatically. Cleanly. On the drive home, I told him I would not attend dinners where I was a guest in my own life. I would not be translated into someone easier. I would not compete with silence. He said nothing. That was his answer. Afterward. I didn't announce my withdrawal. I didn't threaten or explain. I simply stopped showing up where I was diminished. When invitations came, I declined politely. When messages arrived late, I answered later. The space I left behind did the talking for me. The consequences arrived slowly. His mother called first, confused by my absence. I kept my replies brief. Kind. Final. His sister stopped texting altogether. The jokes disappeared because there was no audience left to receive them. My fiancé tried once more to restore balance without choosing a side. He suggested compromise. Distance without decisions. I listened. Then I told him something simple. That love without protection becomes expectation. And expectation, when ignored, turns into entitlement. That was the first time he looked at me fully in weeks. Not defensive. Not uncertain. Just tired. We separated quietly. No shouting. No scene. He moved his things out over 2 evenings. We spoke about logistics. We avoided blame. He apologized once, vaguely. I accepted it without taking it seriously. Afterward, his family reached out with softened voices and careful language. They wanted resolution. What they meant was access. I didn't provide it. Months passed. My life became smaller and clearer. Fewer rooms. Fewer tables. More peace. I didn't replace him quickly. I didn't need to. I had learned something more valuable than fluency or patience. I had learned that understanding a language doesn't require speaking it. Patterns are a language. Silence is one too. The last message I received from his mother was brief. She wished me well. No apology. No reflection. I wished her the same. And meant it. I moved forward without anger. Without spectacle. Just dignity, intact. That was enough.